Welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. Today we're going deep on a figure you might not know by name, but whose work has had a huge impact.
Yeah,
We're talking about James Mill,
James Mill.
a Scotsman born way back in 1773.
Wow.
And get this guy was a total polymath, like a serious Renaissance man. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Political philosopher, historian, psychologist, educational theorist, economist, and a reformer in law politics. You name it.
That's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, super impressive. And for, for all you philosophy nerds out there listening,
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was really grappling with the big questions, Like, what makes us tick? How do we build a just society? All that good stuff.
Absolutely. And, he's not just some obscure historical footnote either.
Yeah.
His ideas really did have a lasting impact. I mean, especially when you consider his connection to utilitarianism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're going to dig into today, right? Like, who was James Mill? What were his big ideas? And why should we still care about him today? So we'll be diving into his major works, the analysis of the phenomena in the human mind, elements of political economy, his massive history of British India, which is like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, his really influential essays on government and education. So, yeah, we've got a lot to cover.
We do. It's a rich body of work, for sure.
So to kick things off, let's maybe paint a little picture of Mill's life, give folks some context. So he was born in Scotland to a shoemaker, but his mother was really the driving force behind his education. She even changed their last name to Mill.
Wow.
Yeah, she was ambitious for him, pushed him really hard in his studies. From a young age, it was all about hitting the books for James.
Wow. So like a real stage mom, but for like intellectual pursuits.
Uh-huh. Yeah, something like that. And all that hard work paid off. I mean, he ended up tutoring, then studying at the University of Edinburgh, soaking up all those Enlightenment ideas from guys like Adam Smith.
Oh, yeah. The Scottish Enlightenment. That was a really fertile period.
Yeah.
Huge influence on Mill, for sure.
Totally. Yeah. And then we get some juicy tidbits about his personal life, too. Like, there was this early love interest, but it didn't work out because of, social stuff.
Forbidden love.
And then get this, years later, he challenged the woman's husband to like an educational race between their sons.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
Yeah, pretty intense, right? Shows how seriously he took education. Then he moves to London, starts writing like crazy to support his big family, and finally lands a gig at the East India Company.
That London period must have been wild.
Oh yeah, it was a time of major intellectual ferment, for sure. So this brings us to around 1808 when Mill meets Jeremy Bentham.
Ah, Bentham.
Yeah.
The OG utilitarian.
Right. And they hit it off. They were both passionate about religious tolerance, legal reform, shaking things up a bit.
Kindred spirits.
Totally. But their personalities were super different. Bentham was kind of this eccentric, wealthy bachelor, and Mill was this hardworking family man.
Opposites attract, I guess.
Yeah, in a way. But here's the thing. Mill was a way better writer than Bentham. Like, he could take Bentham's complex ideas and make them clear and compelling.
So he was kind of like Bentham's PR guy.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. He made utilitarianism accessible and really helped popularize it.
That's fascinating. You don't always think about the role of, like, clear communication in the history of ideas.
Right. But it's so important. And Mill was a master of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, he also nudged Bentham towards a more democratic vision, emphasizing things like economic justice and the importance of representing the people.
So their relationship wasn't just one-sided. They both influenced each other.
Exactly. They were a real dynamic duo, at least for a while. They sparked all these reform movements, even influenced the Reform Act of 1832.
Wow. They really left their mark.
They did. But, as often happens with these intense partnerships, things eventually cooled off personally.
Yeah, people are complicated.
They are. But their political aims mostly stayed aligned until Bentham's death in 1832.
So it was more of a professional parting of ways.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. So anyway, that's the backdrop, the stage is set.
Yeah.
Now we're going to dive into Mill's ideas, starting with his essay on government.
Okay, let's do it.
So this essay is where he lays out his vision for, how a government should actually work. And his starting point is this idea that government is a tool.
A tool.
Yeah, a tool to achieve a specific goal. And that goal is the happiness of the community.
Makes sense.
So far, so good.
Right. He's all about maximizing happiness for everyone. And he starts with this assumption that we're all driven by pleasure and pain.
Classic utilitarianism.
Right. We want to feel good and avoid feeling bad. And this leads us to act in our own self-interest.
Okay, but that sounds kind of like a recipe for chaos, right?
Hmm?
Everyone just out for themselves.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? If everyone's just looking out for number one, how do you prevent some people from exploiting others?
Right. That's the big question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Mill argues that unchecked power is the culprit, whether it's a monarchy, an aristocracy, or even a direct democracy. He thought that would be too chaotic.
Interesting. So he's not a fan of pure democracy.
Not really. He thinks it would just evolve into mob rule and distract people from, productive work.
So what's his solution then? Well, he lands on representative democracy.
Okay, so people elect representatives to make decisions for them.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
then the question is, how do you make sure those representatives actually act in the best interests of the people?
Right, because they could just get in there and start feathering their own nests.
Totally. And Mill's answer is kind of clever. He says you need frequent elections and short terms in office.
Okay, then let's...
So the idea is if representatives know they have to face the voters again soon, they're more likely to do what the people want.
So it's all about accountability.
Exactly. They're kept in check by the threat of being voted out.
It's like a built-in incentive system.
Right. And Mill believed this would create an identity of interest between the representatives and the electorate.
So they're both on the same team, basically.
Yeah, because the representatives know that their own happiness ultimately depends on the happiness of the people they represent.
It's a pretty optimistic view of human nature, though, isn't it?
No. Yeah, it is. And some people would definitely disagree with it. But that's Mill for you. He's got faith in reason and in people's ability to act in their own best interest.
Okay, so where does this leave us with the idea of representation, then?
Well, Mill was a huge advocate for expanding the right to vote. He thought everyone should have a say in how they're governed.
He was pretty radical for his time, though.
Oh, yeah. He was way ahead of the curve on that one. He even called out those who supported a limited franchise, saying they were just protecting their own sinister interests.
He didn't mince words?
Nope. He was a straight shooter, for sure. So this brings us to another interesting concept, the middle rank.
The middle rank.
Yeah, Mill puts a lot of emphasis on this group. He sees them as the engine of progress, the folks who are driving innovation and science, art, and even government.
So is he talking about the middle class like we understand it today?
Not exactly. It's more about merit than just money. He's talking about people who are intelligent, virtuous, and public-spirited, regardless of their wealth.
So it's more of an intellectual elite.
Yeah, in a way. He even pointed to people like Francis Place, who was a radical tailor, and David Ricardo, who was a stockbroker, as examples of the middle rank.
Interesting. So it's really about individual qualities, not social status.
Right. It's a kind of early version of the meritocracy idea. The best and brightest should be the ones leading the way.
And he saw this middle rank as playing a crucial role in guiding and educating the rest of society.
Exactly. They're the ones who can help people understand complex issues and make informed decisions.
Okay, so Mill lays out all these ideas in his essay on government. But it wasn't exactly met with universal acclaim, right?
Oh, no. It caused a major stir, especially among some of the more established thinkers of the day.
Like who?
One of his biggest critics was Thomas Macaulay.
Macaulay.
The historian. Yeah, he wrote this scathing review of Mill's essay in the Edinburgh Review. Basically tore it to shreds.
Oh, wow. That's got to sting.
Yeah, it did. And Macaulay's main beef was with Mill's method. He thought Mill was way too abstract and theoretical.
So he was more of an empiricist.
Exactly. He thought you needed to look at history and real-world evidence, not just rely on abstract reasoning.
And what did Mill say to that?
Well, he didn't actually respond directly to Macaulay, at least not right away.
Really? Why not?
His son, John Stuart Mill, said that he just didn't think Macaulay was engaging with reason itself.
Ouch. So basically, he thought Macaulay was just missing the point.
Yeah, something like that. But he did eventually address similar criticisms from other people, so he wasn't totally silent on the issue.
Okay, so this whole debate with Macaulay really highlights this fundamental tension between theory and experience in political thought.
It does, and it's a tension that still exists today. Do we start with abstract principles, or do we base our ideas on what we observe in the world?
It's a tough question.
It is, and there's no easy answer, but it's something worth thinking about. So anyway, moving on from government, let's talk about another one of Mill's big passions, education.
Okay, he was a big believer in education, right?
Huge. He even quoted Helvetius, who said, "L'éducation peut tout," which means education can do everything.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
It is, but Mill really believed it. He saw education as the key to creating a better society.
So for him, it wasn't just about learning facts and figures.
No, it was about shaping character, developing virtue, and creating citizens who could think for themselves.
And this is where his psychology comes in, right?
Exactly. He had this whole theory of the mind called associationist psychology that basically said all our knowledge comes from our senses.
Okay, explain that one to me.
So basically, we experience the world through our senses, right? We see things, we hear things, we smell things, and so on.
Right.
And those sensory experiences create impressions in our minds.
Okay.
And then when those things are no longer present, we still have these faint copies of those impressions in our minds, which he called ideas.
So like a mental picture of something you've seen before.
Exactly. And Mill argued that these ideas can get linked together in our minds based on how often they occur together.
Like if you always see a certain type of flower in a certain place, you might start to associate those two things together.
Right. And he thought that this process of association was how we learned everything from language to complex ideas to even our moral beliefs.
So our whole understanding of the world is built up from these associations.
That's the idea. And
Yeah.
the stronger the association, the more ingrained it becomes in our minds.
So that's how we form habits, good and bad.
Exactly. And Mills saw this as a really powerful tool for shaping people's character.
I see where he's going with this.
Right. If you can control the associations that people form,
Mhm.
you can influence their thoughts, their beliefs, their actions.
And that's where education comes in.
Exactly. Education is all about creating the right kind of associations.
So like teaching kids to associate honesty with reward and dishonesty with punishment.
Right. It's about deliberately shaping their moral compass.
But it's not just about morality,
Mm.
right? He also emphasized the importance of intellectual development.
Oh, yeah. He wanted people to be able to think critically, analyze information, and form their own opinions.
So basically, he wanted to create a society of informed, engaged citizens.
Exactly. People who could participate in democracy and hold their leaders accountable.
And he thought education was the key to all of that.
He did. He truly believed that education could transform society.
It's a powerful vision.
It is. So to sum up, James Mill was a complex and fascinating thinker. He was a champion of individual liberty, representative government, and the power of education.
And he wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo.
Nope. He was a true radical in many ways, and his ideas continue to resonate today.
They do. Especially his emphasis on the importance of reason, evidence-based decision-making, and the need for a well-informed citizenry.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, think about those things, Think about how you form your own beliefs, how you evaluate information, and how you participate in the world around you.
Yeah, those are questions we should all be asking ourselves.
Absolutely. And on that note, thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.